What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another World Cup 2022 fantasy video. In this one, it's my team selection ahead of the tournament starting tomorrow. And if you haven't already watched my Matchday 1 preview video, which I released yesterday, I would make sure to go and do that because some of the rules for the official game, the one that obviously I'm playing and talking about in this video, did kind of get updated and clarified. And that has changed the way that I'm picking my Matchday 1 squad because it's now only for Matchday 1. I'm almost certainly going to wildcard in Matchday 2. So I'm not worried about what fixtures teams have in Matchday 2, Matchday 3 and beyond. It's Matchday 1 only. So keep that in mind when you're watching the video. I'll go through who my captains are, what chips I'm playing and all that good stuff. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like, hit subscribe if you haven't already, and just a quick word about our sponsor for today's video. So unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably aware there's a massive tournament starting on Sunday, and SoRare, who have sponsored today's video, are running the Global Cup alongside that tournament. Completely free to play, really easy to pick up. You've only got to pick a squad of 8 players. I'm going to show you my squad in a minute, and there's some great prizes up for grabs as well, such as meeting Zinedine Zidane, signed jerseys, digital cards for your collection as well. And if you sign up to my mini league, there's a link in the description below. The top 3 will also win signed jerseys. So like I said, it's really easy to put a squad together. You've got 100 gems to spend. Each player costs a slightly different amount. You've only actually got to pick 8 players for the squad in total, 2 from each position. But importantly, only 5 of those players will actually play in each round. So as it stands right now, I've got Benzema and Harry Kane. But let's say that I think Brazil, for example, are going to do really well and a little bit better than France will. I can remove Benzema and put Neymar in instead. I'm 3 gems over budget, so I can downgrade someone like Kevin De Bruyne to a midfielder that's a bit cheaper. Now, the cool thing about this game versus other fantasy football games is the scoring system is much more in depth. It's not just about those players that are going to get you the goals and get you the assists. It's also about who's creating chances, who's winning duels, who's winning tackles. If you name it, SoRare are probably tracking it for the Global Cup in terms of getting a player's total points put together. So it's more representative of what's actually happened in the match. So for my midfielders now, I only have 16 to spend, but I can go for Bernardo Silva, Goretzka, Gundogan. I'm actually going to go for Rodrigo de Paul. So I've swapped Benzema and De Bruyne for Rodrigo de Paul and Neymar because I think Argentina and Brazil are going to do really well. And that is it. I just have to go ahead and confirm the draft. Now, because I only have to play 5 players in each round, in a few of the positions, so midfielder, defence and goalkeeper, I've gone for the cheapest possible player so that I can spend more of my gems on the players that are actually going to play. It's as easy as that. Loads of great prizes up for grabs, completely free to play. Make sure you join my league. Click that link in the description below before the tournament starts. So we'll start off with the goalkeepers and defenders first of all. Because in this format of the game you can make manual substitutions, you're going to see weird things on the bench, like the fact that I've got Morata, Cancelo and Neymar all there. I'll talk about them as we go through and get to their positions. I also just wanted to say that I'm pretty much going to play the 12th man chip. I'm not sure there's going to be much that kind of sways me from doing that at this point. It has to be activated before the first fixture of the match day that you want to use it in. So if you want to use it in match day 1, you've got to activate it before the Ecuador and Qatar game on Sunday. So just keep that in mind. I'll talk about who I'm going to use that on later on. So goalkeepers first of all. This is kind of the first 2 goalkeepers that I started with for my first draft. So Roche from Uruguay and Costa from Portugal. Now obviously Portugal defence I think is going to be pretty decent, and he's the cheapest way into that of 5 million. So that's why I've gone for him. Now I did swap at one point to not have both these goalkeepers, but one of the rule changes that we found out or got clarified yesterday was that you can swap players on the same calendar day. Now you've got to make sure you do it before the next match kicks off, and it is quite a close turnaround. I think Uruguay play and then the next game is Portugal. So if Uruguay don't keep a clean sheet and Roche doesn't get too many points, I can swap him to Costa on that calendar day, but only after the Uruguay game has finished. So it is going to be cutting it close. It would still probably be easier to have goalkeepers on different days just so I don't miss that substitution window. But I think for 9 million in total spent on goalkeepers, that's a pretty good combination. That's probably what I'm going to go with. I don't think there's too many issues over those 2 as starters. If you've got a different opinion on that, of course, leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. But I think they're both pretty decent options for 5 and 4 million. I was looking at possibly going for Roche and spending a bit more on a goalkeeper, like 5.5 and 6. But as it stands, I just don't have that cash. So that's what I've gone with. In defence, we got Mailer, Dumfries, Trippier, Pavard, and Cancelo as well. Cancelo plays towards the end of the week, so that's why he's on the bench. I can always bring him on later. Now for France, I kind of want Theo Hernandez, right? I do really like him, but I've seen some predicted French lineups ahead of the Australia game that have, I think it's Lucas Hernandez playing at left back in the back four. So if Theo Hernandez isn't nailed on, I don't want to take that risk. Now on the right-hand side, Pavard should be their right back. I guess Koundé could play there as well, but I'm pretty sure that Pavard's going to be in that position, right? So he's the one I'm going to go for just for minutes, really. I think he's slightly, from what I've read anyway, like I'm not pretending to be an expert on all these teams. That is definitely not the case. But from what I've read, Pavard seems to have less of an issue with people maybe taking his spot on the right than maybe Theo Hernandez does on the left. So we'll see. If there's any more information that comes out before the deadline, I might change that. But I just think France defence in match day 1 against Australia looks pretty good. And you can get one of their fullbacks for just 5 million. So that seems like a pretty decent price. So that's why I've gone for him. I'm back to Trippier as my only England defender. I do think that as the tournament goes on, there is a chance that he might not start a game at some point, because if England play a back four, Kyle Walker could definitely play right back. Now I know everyone is expecting England to play a back three every single game, and that might happen, and if it does, Trippier will definitely be the right wing back because Southgate just doesn't trust Trent Alexander-Arnold. I've spoken about that a lot. But in a back four, Walker could play, but he hasn't played many matches recently for Man City because of injury. So I think at least for match day 1, Trippier should be absolutely fine. And after that, I can reassess about whether or not I want to put him back on my wild card in match day 2. And we'll worry about match day 3 when we get there. So I think for match day 1, he's fine. And I think him and Luke Shaw are probably not too far apart, but I would expect, like from open play, but I would expect Trippier to take more set pieces. So that's why I've gone for him. Dumfries is just an attacking legend for Netherlands in that kind of back three formation. It looks like Daley Blind will probably play as left wing back. Now, I'm not sure. I haven't watched Netherlands much playing in that formation, apart from obviously at the Euros. I don't know how much Daley Blind will get forward, but I know that Dumfries will. And he almost plays like as a striker at times in that wing-back spot. And I think he's fully fit. I don't think there's going to be an issue with not starting. And I think Senegal obviously going to be missing Mane now as well. That is going to be a big kind of loss to them. And it definitely helps Netherlands. So this is probably... maybe not, probably Netherlands' toughest game of the group. So ideally, you know, maybe you go for Netherlands players in other matches, but I think they're also the strongest team in that group, which is why I've gone for him. And I think there's a possibility for a clean sheet, especially with no Mane there. Joachim Mæhle I've talked about a lot this last week about how much I love him. He's only 4.5 million. I think Denmark can get something against Tunisia, clean sheet. He's possible at attacking returns well because he's just so attacking. And he's one of those players where I don't think it really matters minutes wise whether they play a back three or a back four. He's either going to play left wing back or he's going to play left back. I don't think there's any issues with him missing out at all, so he just seems too cheap to turn down. There's obviously some 3.5 million defenders that I could look at. I had Sosa, for example, from Croatia, but I do think looking at, I mean, midfield could do well, but when I look at the players available in this game, defence and forwards are really what I like the most, I would say. So that's why I wanted to spend a bit more in defence and haven't gone for Sosa. He could still be a great pick for match day 1. I've just decided to spend a bit more money. I've gone for Cancelo against Ghana, so I've got the Portugal double up. I've got Costa and goal and Cancelo, and I just think he's 6 million, so he's the most expensive defender in that team. But that's because of how attacking he is. He's had returns for Portugal recently when he's played as well. We know how good he is. We've seen him play for Man City, of course, and I think that Portugal defence is going to be pretty decent. So that's my kind of back four that I'm starting with. But obviously, I can bring on Cancelo and Costa later on in the week if I need them, if any of those players don't get me points. And you also don't have to bring them on for a defender as well, right? If one of my midfielders doesn't do well, I can play a back 5 and bring Cancelo on instead. So I think it's looking pretty strong. Obviously, this is not 100% locked in. I might get a change of mind before I get to the deadline on Sunday. But I think most of these players are fairly locked in when it comes to defence. Midfield, maybe not quite so much. So I'm actually starting off with a 5-man midfield, and that's purely just because of the way the fixtures fall. So on the bench, Morata with Spain, Cancelo at Portugal, and Neymar Brazil. They just play later on in the week, right? That's simple as that. I can bring them on if I need to. In the actual midfield itself, I've gone for a double up with Argentina, Rodrigo de Paul and Di Maria. Now, de Paul is only 5 million. I don't really see too many better options in midfield for 5 million or below. If you don't think that's the case and you think there is someone better, let me know in the comments below. low, but it's worth remembering that midfielders will also get points for tackles and key passes as well as assists and goals as well. So if he can rack up a few points in other ways, it might be that I keep him on the pitch. And what you should be doing in this format of kind of fantasy football, because of the manual substitutions, is you should be waiting as long as possible to make your subs. So let's say, for example, that Rodrigo de Paul only gets kind of 3 points, but someone plays after him and they only get 2 points. Well, okay, it's only a 1 point difference, but you should obviously sub out the player that's got 2 points. So because of the manual substitutions, even a player like de Paul that you're not expecting to go and get loads of goals and assists can still be more beneficial to you than someone else that happens to be like a defender, for example, and blanks. So I really like him, and if I need to, I can sub him off. I can put one of the heavy hitters on there. And I do think that Argentina are going to do really well in that game. And remember, I'm only looking at match day 1. At this point, I'm starting to look at things like the 538 kind of rankings for who's going to win the World Cup, how the matches are going to pan out, bookies odds. There's a tweet that I retweeted on my timeline as well. 2 guys that I follow on Twitter that have put together kind of a model for expected points and stuff like that. So I'm kind of putting all those things together, plus my own thoughts to how I picked that team. And Argentina just look strong favourites for that first game. So hopefully there's some goals, because I've got 3 attackers from Argentina. We'll come on to that in a minute. I bet you can guess who the last one is. Elsewhere, Bergwijn, who's pretty much been in every one of my squads, for 7 million, he's going to play up front for the Netherlands. Seems pretty good to me. Depay is someone I like as well, but it doesn't look like he's going to play in match day 1. And obviously, he's listed as a forward. Then I've gone back to Sané. Now, I originally had him, but when I thought that I wasn't going to wildcard till the quarterfinals, I decided not to go for any Germany players because they've got to play Spain. I think it's in match day 2. It might be match day 3, but whatever. But now that I'm only concentrating on match day 1 itself, I think Germany are going to do really well in that game, so I want one of their attackers. And unfortunately, the likes of Gnabry are listed as forwards. And it's just not really a spot that I have free. Obviously, in midfield, I've got 5 spots. Up front, it's only 3. So I've gone for Sané. I think Musiala, if he plays, could be a bargain for 8 million. But I think from a minutes perspective, Sané is more nailed on to start the game and obviously be on the pitch a bit longer. That might not be the case, but that's how it feels like going into match day 1. So Sané's the one I've gone for because I think Germany are going to do really well against Japan. Now, with Di Maria and with Sané, like they're both 8.5 million or above. There's other players that I do quite like the look of. Eriksen is one. I'm going to come on to Skov Olsen in a minute, but Eriksen is one for 8 million. I think Denmark will do well against Tunisia. He's pretty much on most set pieces, I think, and definitely on penalties as well. Should be playing quite advanced. So I do like Eriksen. I also would quite like getting another England player in there if I could. Now, I try not to be biased when it comes to fantasy football. If you've watched my FPL videos, for example, I don't think I've owned a single Man United player this year. I hardly had any last year either because they're just not doing that well. But this is a short format game. Okay, there's only like 7 match days. Your overall rank doesn't get kind of held. Like if you play the Euro game in a couple of years and then play the World Cup in 2026, your rank history from previous tournaments just doesn't get saved. So I like to have a bit more fun, and that includes putting in players from England. Now the problem with England midfielders are, you've got the likes of Rice and maybe Bellingham who are probably nailed, but really you want someone like Foden or Saka, and you're just not 100% sure who's going to start. But there's lots of rumours circulating kind of last week that Foden is kind of very close to starting, and he did usually in the Euros, at least at the start in the group stages. So I could see myself switching Di Maria or Sané to Foden, but I think if I'm forgetting about the bias, these 2 players are probably better, I would say, for match day 1. But I think England will beat Iran, and it could be a few goals there. It just depends how they set up. So I just wanted to quickly kind of note that. And then Skov Olsen for 6 million. Again, I don't know if he's 100% nailed, but I've looked at a few different reports on Twitter from different people, some Danish people as well, who obviously know their squad better than me. And it seems to me that he's a little bit more nailed for minutes than maybe someone like Damsgaard is. And obviously he's 2 million less than Eriksen as well. Now, I don't think he's someone that's going to start and then be on the pitch for 80 to 90 minutes every game, but hopefully he'll get 60 plus. And then obviously hopefully get a few returns as well, some points for key passes, tackles, whatever it is. And if not, and I've taken that risk, again, I can always sub him on. I think when I look at this team, the defence, pretty much the whole defence, I would say, the goalkeepers, Sané, Bergwijn, Di Maria, I'm pretty happy with. So if Rodrigo De Paul and Skov Olsen are the two that I'm not quite sure about, but they're only costing me 11 million, that kind of feels okay. So that's why I've picked those two. I think you could do a slightly different combination. So Dumfries is 6 million, De Paul is 5 million, so that's 11 million. If I went for Sosa instead of Dumfries, that would free up 2.5, so I could go for a 7.5 million midfielder. So then it would be like Sosa and Perisic instead of De Paul and Dumfries. I just feel like this combination and this way of distributing the funds is better, to have a bit less in midfield and put more in defence and more in the forward. So that's my 5-man midfield. I think it looks pretty good. There's a few players that I've not picked that I like. They might get changed, but right now I think that's looking pretty decent. So adding in the forwards, and of course you've already seen Neymar and Morata on the bench, but at least I can talk about them a little bit more now. I actually wonder how many people have already left a comment below telling me Morata is a bad pick before I've had a chance to properly speak about him. For what it's worth, he might not make the final cut before tomorrow's deadline, but I'll come on to that in just a minute. We'll get the easy ones out of the way first. So Lionel Messi is definitely in. I think he's been in every single draft that I've made. I do expect Argentina to do pretty well in this game, and he's probably one of like the best picks, I would say, for match day 1, maybe top 3. I just think they're going to do really well in that game, and we know how involved he will be, right? So he's definitely in, and he will also be my captain. Now, you get 2 captains per match day, so you choose your first captain. Once they play, they're then locked. You can change it once more to someone else. So if Messi doesn't get quite the amount of points that I want, I will switch to Neymar. They are going to be my 2 captains. Some people might want to captain Mbappe in match day 1, in which case he should obviously be in your main squad. But I'm happy enough to captain Messi, and if he doesn't get enough points, then switch to Neymar. Exactly how many points it would take for me to not switch, I'm not entirely sure, because in the Euros game, we had captains every single day that we could switch to. It's a little bit different in this one. So if Messi was to get 8 or 9 points, that would then be tricky. I think if he only gets 1 return and maybe gets a few points for whatever else, shots on target or something like that, I'd probably switch. If he gets 2 returns and he gets 10 points or more, I would probably stick to Messi rather than go to Neymar. I think, again, if we had more captains to come after that, then I would probably risk a higher score. But because we've only got 1 change, I probably won't. So Messi and Neymar will be my 2 captains. I think they're going to do really well. Look, it's really close with Mbappe as well, but he's also more expensive. He's 11 million. So having him as the 12th man means there's more budget to spend elsewhere. And I think with 2 captains, I'm hoping that one of Messi or Neymar can outscore Mbappe. It might not happen, but let's see. So I'm going to use my 12th man for match day 1. You could use it in match day 2 or 3, depending on when you're wild carding, but it just seems like a good time to use it. And if I want to use my power captain in the group stages, I'll just use that in match day 3 instead. So Messi and Neymar are definitely in. Mbappe's pretty much going to be my 12th man. Then it just comes down to Morata. Now, I do like the idea of having another kind of pricey forward here, someone like Harry Kane, maybe just getting Mbappe in and using the 12th man on someone else. But I think, given the strength of kind of the defence, so although I haven't spent, like, Cancelo and Dumfries are both 6 million, everyone's actually cheaper than that, but I think they're all solid picks. I also get to have Bergwijn, Sané and Di Maria. I think having 1 cheaper forward is probably okay. On my last draft, I had Harry Kane as well, but there's quite a few picks around the 8 million price point, and as per the rules, which I spoke about yesterday in the match day 1 preview, we do get 2 transfers during match day 1 where you can remove a player that hasn't played yet for someone else yet to play as well. So I don't actually know. I'll come over to the World Cup screen itself. I don't actually know if I'm going to start with Morata, but if I do, and we look at the fixtures here, so he plays 23rd of November, which I think is the Wednesday. And I just think Spain are going to do really well against Costa Rica. When I hear people talk about, you know, who the favourites for the tournament are, there's a lot of people saying Brazil, you know, and Argentina, absolutely fair enough. And I'm not saying Spain are favourites or anything like that, but I feel like people are quite down on them, whereas I don't know, I thought Spain in the Euros were really good. I'm not saying it's the same team necessarily. They're going to do as well. But I think Morata will get lots of chances. Now, he can be extremely frustrating to watch as a fantasy player. We saw in the Euros, right? He gets quite a few chances, doesn't necessarily put them away. But I think for someone that gets that many chances, at some point he will put them away, and 8 million feels like an okay price to punt on. Now, if I'm very engaged with the game and he doesn't start, because there is a chance he won't start, then there's lots of other players I could switch to. So Belgium, for example, if Batshuayi's up front, I could look at him. Uruguay, I could move to Nunez instead. And even if all those players aren't an option, I could just move to Richarlison as well. Now, I don't have unlimited transfers to make those moves. Like if I start with Morata and he doesn't start and I decide to make a move for Nunez, for example, and he doesn't start, that's going to cost me another transfer then to move to Richarlison. But I think in match day 1 I can probably kind of take that risk. So that's what I'm thinking about. The other thing that I'm keeping an eye on is there have been some predicted lineups for France, and obviously you don't know how accurate they are or how much inside info there is. But if you look at the forwards for France, Giroud was actually touted as possibly starting that Australia game, and he's only 7.5. Now, if it looks like he's starting, I might put him in instead of Morata, and if he doesn't start and I see the lineup and that's the case, I will probably just switch to someone who's more assured, like Nunez for Uruguay, or possibly Richarlison for Brazil, and just leave it at that, and then just save my other transfer just in case I need it. But that's what I'm looking at. The only other thing to say, which I've seen a lot of people discussing on Twitter, and as at the time of recording, I'm not sure if it's going to be accurate, a lot of people think that they can game the system and use money for players that have already played to upgrade somewhere else. So as an example, let's say I had Harry Kane instead of Messi, and then instead of De Paul, no, sorry, yeah, we can have De Paul. So I have Kane up front and De Paul in midfield, and then Kane plays and I get his points locked in. De Paul still hasn't played, right? So he would be an unlocked player. Some people think that they can swap Harry Kane to a cheap forward, and you won't get that forward's points, but you've already got Harry Kane's points locked in. And then because you've kind of saved, like I'm talking like a 5 million or a 4.5 million forward, because you've saved like 7 or 8 million, you then use that to do De Paul up to someone like Kevin De Bruyne before he plays, and then you also get De Bruyne as well. I'm not sure if that's going to work. I'm trying to get clarification over whether it will. If it does, then that might slightly change how I pick my team and how I use my transfers in match day 1. But if we can't do that, or we don't get confirmation, I think this is the kind of team that I'm going to go for, and I'm just going to take a risk on this Morata spot. Someone like Giroud, maybe someone like Morata, and if they don't start, I'll switch to Darwin Nunez. So overall, I think that team looks pretty good. As always, everyone's got an opinion, and that is fair enough. There's going to be some players that you don't rate, that you want to swap. I don't think there's any out-and-out bad picks there, right? There's other players you could go for instead, of course, like I've just said. Like I've already spoken about Foden, Harry Kane. I'm sure there's other midfielders people like. I really like Christian Eriksen, for example, but I think it looks like a pretty good squad. So that's how I'm shaping up ahead of tomorrow's deadline. Let me know below what you think. So there we go, that is my team selection for match day 1. If you've enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Of course, make sure to check out the Global Cup ahead of the tournament start tomorrow. There is a link in the description below to get signed up for that. You only have to pick a squad of 8 players. It's really simple to get involved, free to play, and obviously there's lots of great prizes. And if you join my mini league as well, the top 3 will win signed jerseys. So make sure to check that out. I'm going to leave that video there. There probably won't be another video on Sunday unless something major happens with my team or I need to change it completely, and there won't be a deadline stream or anything like that. So hopefully you've enjoyed the videos in the run up to the World Cup starting. There'll still be some videos throughout the tournament as well, so make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll catch you again soon. Good luck.